The U.S. Air Force need a new, long-range, stealthy, high-tech sixth-generation fighter to confront the growing mixture of threats presented by China in the Pacific theater. While the growing multi-service and multinational fleet of F-35s continues to present a formidable deterrent in the region, some might wonder if the current deterrence posture in the air is insufficient to meet a fast-evolving Chinese threat in future years. The size of the U.S., Korean, and Japanese fleet of F-35s is expanding exponentially, and the recently added U.S. military bases in the Philippines and Japan could present new opportunities for the U.S. to forward position more F-35s in the Pacific. While the PLA operates a growing fleet of 5th-gen J-20 aircraft, it is land-launched and may not rival larger numbers of F-35s or an air-dominant F-22 in the Pacific. At the moment and in the near future, the U.S. and its allies may be well positioned to achieve air superiority in any major engagement with China, particularly if greater numbers of F-35s continue to arrive throughout the region. This is particularly true should the U.S. Navy continue forward positioning F-35 armed carriers and amphibs in the Pacific. At the moment, the growing fleet of U.S. and allied F-35s seem well positioned to counter any PLA threat in the air. However, surging into future years, will a force of F-22s and F-35s be sufficient to counter a fast-modernizing People's Liberation Army Air Force? The PLA has already revealed a rendering of its 6th-generation aircraft, and U.S. 5th-generation aircraft might face substantial range challenges in the Pacific theater. A just-published October 14 research essay by the Department of the Air Force's China Aerospace Studies Institute sheds light on this question as part of a broader analysis of the kind of Pacific strategy best pursued by the U.S. Air Force. When Joint Chiefs of Staff General Charles Brown was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force several years ago, he said the service was considering 2 different variants for an NGAD fighter, to include a longer-range aircraft for the Pacific and a smaller, shorter-range 6th-gen fighter for Europe. It is not clear if this thinking still exists, as the current approach seems quite different. The very existence of an advanced manned 6th-generation stealth fighter jet is now being re-evaluated according to Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall. Speaking recently at the Air Force Association Symposium, Kendall confirmed that NGAD selection has been paused and that the effort was being re-evaluated. We're looking at a range of alternatives, and crewed versus uncrewed is one of the things we're thinking about. I believe that we're probably going to do one more version of a crewed, more traditional aircraft. I don't know exactly what that aircraft will look like yet, Kendall said, as quoted in Defense Scoop. It's designed to make it able to control CCAs effectively and fight with CCAs, I think is a question mark. Whether there'll be variants that might be crewed or uncrewed is another question mark. The concept of having an advanced, highly capable manned 6th-gen platform, however, does seem to make great sense in light of some of the Cassie report's analysis. The expanse of the Pacific, as suggested by the essay, seems to call for the corresponding need to develop assets, weapons, and platforms optimized for dispersed, multi-domain, long-range ground-sea-air warfare across a massive ocean, land, and island expanse. Kendall's 6th-gen thinking may indeed align with this, as there may be a way to reduce costs for the platform, yet still meet key requirements for a platform to thrive in the Pacific. Kendall does seem clear that a 6th-gen aircraft needs to exist, and he talks often about the China threat. Yet there are likely many questions regarding what can be achieved within certain budget constraints. Key performance parameters could be compromised in requirements, trade-offs to save money, something which is generating both concern and controversy. This strategy, the Cassie paper maintains, would require 6th-generation air protection in place to secure specific platforms capable of long-range and long-loiter requirements with advanced long-range weapons such as a B-52 or B-21. The B-52 operates with a range of 8,000 miles, and the B-21 is reported to operate at ranges of 6,000 miles, and both platforms are armed with long-range air-launched cruise missiles. platforms like the B-52, B-21, and F-15EX fulfill long-range and long-loiter requirements, while also providing capability to employ advanced long-range weapons. Paired with the F-22 and Next Generation Air Dominance (NGAD) fighter to provide OCA escort, the long-range platforms can maintain a presence outside the JAS Joint Engagement Zone while executing long-range strikes, removing the need for platforms to enter the JAS until it is severely degraded. A closer-in fight will require mass and attritable platforms capable of sustaining losses against advanced concentrated air defense systems, ground-fired interceptors, and sophisticated air-to-air threats. One way to both achieve the requisite mass while reducing casualties is, quite simply, through using unmanned systems. The CAS-I-SA makes the assessment that in a major large-scale engagement with a capable adversary, a close-in fight may ultimately become necessary, a tactical consideration likely driving the current Air Force push to build large numbers of Combat Collaborative Aircraft, CCA. Not only are CCAs being built to lower costs, but the Air Force intends to build them in large numbers as unmanned platforms to increase mass and aircrew survivability. Regardless of whatever specific form a sixth-generation aircraft takes, there is likely consensus that a form of NGAD needs to exist. Arguably, the Air Force needs and would at very least greatly benefit from an advanced stealth fighter capable of operating with a range ability and performance capacity to outmatch China in the Pacific and meet the complex, varied requirements any conflict in the region would present. The Pacific, of course, includes vast distances of ocean separating islands, large land masses, and oceans stretching thousands of miles from northern Japan and the Korean peninsula south to Australia. There are tactical relevant distances within the Pacific which, depending upon a given contingency, will need to be considered, as Taiwan is a very reachable 100 miles from the Chinese mainland. This Chinese proximity advantage, however, can be greatly mitigated or offset by forward operating U.S. Navy carriers and F-35B armed amphibs within a few hundred miles of Taiwan. Added to this defensive equation, it seems relevant to note that any map shows that the distance between the northernmost parts of the Philippines and southern Taiwan is only 155 miles, a circumstance which would seem to enable U.S. allied fifth-generation aircraft to defend Taiwan from land bases in the Philippines. An F-35A, for instance, operates with a range of 1,380 miles with a full weapons load, could reach airspace over Taiwan, and operate with some dwell time without needing to refuel with a risky and highly vulnerable tanker aircraft. If you enjoy content like this, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this video because I appreciate all your support.